The crackling voice emerges from static at 3:17 a.m., desperate and impossibly familiar. Sarah ... If you're listening, I'm still here. But Marcus Webb has been dead for 15 years, lost to the unforgiving Atlantic off Nova Scotia's coast. Sarah Webb jolts awake in her Halifax apartment, her heart hammering against her ribs. The old marine radio on her nightstand, Marcus's radio, shouldn't even be plugged in. She disconnected it years ago, unable to bear the memories it carried. Yet somehow, impossibly, her husband's voice cuts through the darkness like a blade. "Marcus?" she whispers, her voice cracking as she reaches for the radio with trembling fingers. The static swells, then fades to nothing. Sarah sits frozen on the edge of her bed, staring at the silent device. The red LED display shows only empty frequency numbers, mocking her with their digital indifference. Outside her window, Halifax. Harbor stretches black and restless under a moonless sky. The same waters that swallowed her husband whole on that October morning in 2009. She presses her palms against her eyes, trying to push away the flood of memories. Marcus's weathered hands adjusting the radio's dials. His voice calling out coordinates to other boats. The way he'd hum old sea shanties while cleaning his nets, always off-key but somehow perfect. The phone buzzes on her nightstand, making her jump. A text from her sister Claire. "Can't sleep either. Anniversary's tomorrow. Want company? Tomorrow." How could she have forgotten? October 15th, the day Marcus vanished during what should have been a routine fishing trip. 15 years of October 15ths, each one carving deeper into her soul. Sarah types back, "Come over." Something happened. While waiting for Claire, Sarah paces her small living room, unable to shake the certainty that she'd heard Marcus's voice. Not a dream, not her imagination playing cruel tricks. His voice, older somehow, strained with exhaustion but unmistakably his. The radio sits silent on her nightstand like an accusation. 15 years ago, the Coast Guard had called off their search after 5 days. Marcus's boat, the Cassandra's Dream, was found drifting empty 12 miles offshore. Its nets still deployed, but no sign of its captain. The official report cited probable man overboard during severe weather, body lost to the Atlantic's depths. Sarah had never believed it. Marcus knew those waters better than most men knew their own backyards. He'd been fishing them since he was 14, had weathered storms that would have sent other boats limping back to port. The Marcus she'd married wouldn't have simply fallen overboard. But without evidence, without answers, grief had eventually forced her to accept the unacceptable. Claire arrives 20 minutes later, her auburn hair disheveled and concern etched into her features. At 43, she's 2 years younger than Sarah, but has always carried herself with the protective instincts of an older sister. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Claire says, settling onto Sarah's worn couch. "Maybe I have." Sarah explains about the radio transmission, watching Claire's expression shift from concern to gentle skepticism. Sarah ... Claire's voice carries the careful tone she's perfected over 15 years of watching her sister struggle with Marcus's loss. "You know that old radio's been acting up. Remember last month when it picked up that trucker's CB from New Brunswick? This was different." Sarah's voice hardens with conviction. "It was Marcus, Claire. I know my husband's voice." Claire reaches for Sarah's hands, her touch warm and anchoring. "Tomorrow's going to be hard enough without." The radio crackles to life. Both women freeze as static fills the room. Then a voice emerges, distant but clear. "Sarah ... Can you hear me?" "I don't have much time. They're coming back soon." Claire's face drains of color. She'd known Marcus for 8 years before he disappeared, had heard his voice at countless family dinners and Christmas mornings. This voice carries his inflections, his Nova Scotia accent, the way he always pronounced Sarah's name like a prayer. "Marcus?" Sarah lunges for the radio, her hands shaking as she adjusts a frequency dial. "Marcus, where are you?" Static swells, fragments of words breaking through. Hidden. Years. Can't escape. Coordinates. Double quotes. Then silence. Sarah and Claire stare at each other in the aftermath, the impossible hanging between them like smoke. The rational world they've inhabited for 15 years suddenly feels flimsy, inadequate to contain what they've just witnessed. That was him, Claire whispers, her skepticism crumbling. That was really him. Sarah's mind races through possibilities, each more impossible than the last. Marcus is alive. Somewhere, somehow, her husband has survived 15 years of being dead. But where? And why now, after all this time, is he reaching out? The radio remains silent, offering no answers to the questions multiplying in Sarah's head like cancer cells. She thinks about the fragments of his transmission. They're coming back soon. Coming back from where? And who are they? Claire stands abruptly, pacing to the window that overlooks the harbor. We need to call someone. The police, the Coast Guard. And tell them what? That my dead husband is talking to me through a radio? Sarah's laugh carries no humor. They'll think I've finally lost it completely. But even as she says it, Sarah knows she can't let this go. Whatever's happening, wherever Marcus is, he's trying to reach her. After 15 years of silence, of assumed death, her husband is calling for help. She looks at the radio, then at Claire's stunned face, and makes a decision that will change everything. We're going to find him, Sarah says, her voice steady with newfound purpose. Whatever it takes, however impossible it seems, we're going to bring Marcus home. The radio crackles once more, as if responding to her declaration, but this time only static emerges. In the distance, a foghorn sounds across Halifax Harbor, lonely and mournful, like the voice of the sea itself calling out in the darkness. Dawn breaks gray and reluctant over Halifax Harbor as Sarah and Claire sit hunched over Marcus's old charts, the kitchen table transformed into a command center of desperate hope. Coffee grows cold in forgotten mugs while Sarah traces shipping lanes with her finger, searching for patterns that might explain the impossible. He mentioned coordinates, Sarah mutters, studying the weathered nautical charts Marcus had annotated. In his careful handwriting, red X's mark productive fishing spots, blue circles indicate hazardous areas, and penciled notes record tide tables and weather patterns from seasons long past. Claire yawns, exhaustion pulling at her features. Sarah, we've been at this for 3 hours. Maybe we should, the radio crackles. Both women freeze, then scramble toward the bedroom where the ancient device sits like an oracle waiting to speak. Sarah's hands hover over the dials, afraid to touch them and risk losing the signal. Day 15. No, wait. Day 5000. Marcus's voice wavers through the static, distant but unmistakably present. Still counting, Sarah. Still hoping you remember the place we carved our names. Sarah's breath catches. The place they carved their names, Seal Island, a rocky outcrop 20 miles southeast of Halifax where they'd spent their honeymoon camping. Marcus had used his fishing knife to etc. M+S forever into a granite boulder overlooking the sea. Marcus, I'm here. Sarah grabs the radio's microphone, her voice cracking with emotion. Tell me where you are. Static surges, then fragments break through. Can't stay long. They watch. I land. North of. Double quotes, the transmission cuts to silence. Claire's face has gone pale. Sarah, that sounded like he was counting days. 5,000 days is about 15 years, Sarah finishes, her mind reeling. If Marcus has been counting days since his disappearance, if he's been alive all this time, the implications crash over her like a rogue wave. 15 years of grieving a man who wasn't dead. 15 years of rebuilding her life around an absence that was a lie. 15 years of, I need to go to Seal Island, Sarah says, her voice steady despite the chaos in her head. Absolutely not. Claire's tone turns sharp with protective authority. You're not going anywhere based on some radio transmission that could be what? A hoax? Claire, you heard him. You know that voice as well as I do. I know what I heard, but Sarah, think about this logically. If Marcus has been alive for 15 years, where has he been? Why hasn't he come home? Why contact you now? The questions Claire voices are the same ones tearing through Sarah's mind. But logic feels like a luxury she can't afford. Her husband is alive. Everything else is details to be sorted out later. Sarah moves to the bedroom closet, pulling out the waterproof duffel bag she hasn't touched since Marcus disappeared. Inside, his spare weather gear still carries the faint scent of salt and diesel fuel. I'm taking the second chance out to Seal Island, she announces, referring to the small fishing boat she'd inherited from her father but rarely used anymore. Claire blocks the bedroom doorway. You haven't taken that boat out in 2 years. The weather forecast shows storms moving in from the Atlantic. This is insane. Insane as living 15 years thinking your husband is dead when he might be trapped somewhere calling for help. Sarah's voice rises, 15 years of suppressed hope and fury bleeding through. I won't ignore this, Claire. I can't. The sisters stare at each other, the weight of family loyalty warring with practical concern. Finally, Claire's shoulders slump in defeat. If you're doing this, I'm coming with you. Claire, you don't have to. Yes, I do. Someone needs to keep you from getting yourself killed on some wild goose chase. Claire's voice softens. And if there's even a chance Marcus is alive, I want to help bring him home. An hour later, they're loading supplies onto the second chance at Murphy's Marina. The 30-foot fishing boat looks small and vulnerable against the gray chop of the harbor, but her engine purrs with reliable power when Sarah turns the key. Old Murphy himself waddles down the dock, his weathered face creased with concern. Sarah Webb, you're not thinking of taking her out in this weather, are you? Radio's calling for 6-foot swells by afternoon. Just a short run, Murphy. Back before the weather turns. Murphy's roomy eyes study her face, reading the determination there. He'd known Marcus, had sold him bait and fuel for 20 years before the disappearance. That man of yours, he knew these waters better than most. If he got into trouble out there. He's not in trouble, Sarah says, surprising herself with the conviction in her voice. He's waiting for me. Murphy's eyebrows climb toward his hairline, but he doesn't argue. Instead, he disappears into his cluttered shop and returns with a marine GPS unit and emergency flares. Take these, and Sarah, whatever you're really looking for out there, be careful. The sea doesn't give up her secrets easy. As they motor out of Halifax Harbor, the city shrinks behind them until it's just a smudge of gray against the horizon. The Atlantic stretches ahead, its surface rippled with whitecaps that hint at the rougher weather approaching. Claire huddles in the wheelhouse, her face green around the edges as the boat rises and falls with increasing swells. Remind me why I agreed to this. Sarah grips the wheel, her eyes fixed on the GPS coordinates for Seal Island. Because you believe me. Deep down you know I'm right. The radio mounted above the navigation station suddenly springs to life with a burst of static. Sarah's heart leaps, but instead of Marcus's voice, she hears the routine chatter of fishing boats reporting their positions to the Coast Guard. Then, cutting through the commercial traffic, comes a transmission that makes her blood run cold. Unknown vessel approaching restricted waters. Turn back immediately or face consequences. The voice is unfamiliar, harsh with authority, and definitely not from any official Coast Guard frequency. Sarah checks her position on the GPS. They're still 5 miles from Seal Island, well within legal fishing waters. There should be no restricted areas out here. Sarah, Claire whispers, pointing toward the horizon. Look. Through the morning haze, Sarah spots the silhouette of a large vessel anchored near Seal Island. Even at this distance, She can tell it's not a fishing boat or pleasure craft. The profile suggests something military or industrial, bristling with equipment she can't identify. The radio crackles again. Final warning, turn back now. Sarah's hands tighten on the wheel. Marcus mentioned an island, mentioned being watched. If he's being held somewhere, if that vessel is connected to his disappearance. She pushes the throttle forward, and the second chance leaps ahead through the swells, racing toward an encounter that will shatter everything she thought she knew about her husband's fate. The mysterious vessel grows larger through the spray-slicked windshield of the second chance, its angular hull cutting an ominous silhouette against the gray sky. Sarah squints through binoculars, making out details that send ice through her. Veins, no registration numbers, no identifying marks, and armed figures moving along its deck. "Sarah, we need to turn around." Claire's voice trembles as she grips the dashboard. This doesn't feel right. But Sarah has spotted something else. Through the binoculars, a smaller boat tethered to the mysterious vessel's stern. Even from this distance, the lines are familiar. The distinctive blue stripe along the hull, the configuration of the wheelhouse. Her heart stops. "It's the Cassandra's dream," she whispers. Marcus's boat. Claire snatches the binoculars, her hands shaking as she adjusts the focus. That's impossible. The Coast Guard found his boat 15 years ago. It was returned to you, remember? You sold it to that dealer in Lunenburg. Sarah's mind races. She had sold Marcus's boat 3 years after his disappearance, unable to bear keeping it any longer. But now, seeing its twin or possibly the original tethered to this unmarked vessel, questions explode through her consciousness like depth charges. The radio erupts with Marcus's voice, clearer than before. "Sarah, if you can hear this, stay away from the island. They know you're coming. Get the authorities, get help, but don't." The transmission cuts to an electronic squeal, then silence. They're jamming him, Sarah realizes, watching the large vessel's antenna array swiveling in their direction. Someone doesn't want us to communicate. Through the binoculars, she spots movement on Seal Island itself, figures in dark clothing, positioning themselves among the rocks, where she and Marcus had once carved their names. The romantic hideaway of her memories has become something sinister, transformed into what looks like a military operation. Claire's voice cracks with fear. "Sarah, please. Let's go back and call the Coast Guard. If Marcus is really there, if he's been held for 15 years, this is way beyond what we can handle." Sarah knows Claire is right, but the sight of Marcus's boat, real or replica, anchored so close to where his voice has been calling from, fills her with desperate urgency. 15 years of not knowing, of accepting his death, of rebuilding her life around an absence that might have been a lie. She can't turn back now. "Look," Sarah points toward a rocky inlet on the island's north shore, hidden from the large vessel's position. "If we approach from that side, we might be able to get close enough to see what's really happening." "This is insane," Claire mutters, but she doesn't try to stop Sarah as she adjusts their course. The second chance cuts through increasingly. Rough swells as they circle wide around Seal Island. The weather is deteriorating faster than forecast, and spray crashes over the bow with each wave. Sarah fights to keep the boat steady while staying far enough from the mysterious vessel to avoid detection. As they approach the hidden inlet, Sarah spots something that makes her heart race. A small dock carved into the natural rock formation. Invisible unless you know exactly where to look. It's man-made recent construction that definitely wasn't there during her honeymoon 15 years ago. Someone's been developing this island, she realizes aloud. Building infrastructure, creating a base of operations. Claire peers through the binoculars at the rocky shoreline. "I see cave openings. Big ones. And there are lights inside, artificial lighting, like some kind of facility." The pieces begin forming a terrifying picture in Sarah's mind. Seal Island, remote and legally uninhabited, transformed into a hidden base. Marcus's boat somehow connected to the operation. Her husband's voice calling out after 15 years of silence. What if Marcus hadn't fallen overboard during a storm? What if he'd stumbled onto something he wasn't supposed to see? Sarah throttles down as they approach the concealed dock, the engine's rumble dropping to a whisper. The inlet provides natural camouflage, hiding them from the larger vessel while offering a path onto the island. Sarah, Claire grabs her arm. Before we do something we can't take back, I need to ask, what if this isn't what we think? What if Marcus isn't being held here? What if he's involved somehow? The question hangs between them like a loaded weapon. Sarah has spent 15 years believing in Marcus's fundamental goodness, his honesty, his love for her. But the evidence suggests scenarios she's never considered. Marcus alive but unable to return. Marcus involved in something that required his disappearance. Marcus trapped in circumstances beyond her imagination. Only one way to find out, Sarah says, guiding the boat toward the hidden dock. As they tie up at the weathered wooden structure, Sarah notices details that chill her. Recent maintenance, security cameras mounted in camouflaged housings, and, most disturbing of all, scratches in the dock surface that look like they were made by someone trying to carve a message. She kneels to examine the marks more closely, her heart pounding as she makes out letters. Gouged deep into the wood, then below it. H-L-P. He was here, she whispers, tracing the desperate scratches with her finger. Marcus was here, and he carved my name. Claire's face has gone white. Those scratches look fresh. Sarah, what if he's still? A sound echoes from inside the cave system. Footsteps. Multiple sets, moving with military precision. Then voices, speaking in a language Sarah doesn't recognize, but their tone suggests urgency, alarm. The sisters freeze on the dock, realizing they've walked into something far more dangerous than they imagined. Whatever operation is running on Seal Island, whoever is holding Marcus or using his identity, they're about to discover Sarah and Claire's presence. From somewhere deep within the caves comes another sound that stops Sarah's breath. Marcus's voice, not transmitted through radio static but live, immediate, terrified. No, please. I told you everything I know. Sarah doesn't suspect anything. She thinks I'm dead. The implications crash over Sarah like a tsunami. Marcus is alive, he's here, and whoever is holding him has been using his communications to lure her to this island. She's walked directly into a trap that's been 15 years in the making. The sound of Marcus's voice echoing from the cave. Depths galvanizes Sarah into action. Without waiting for Claire's protests, she climbs from the boat onto the slippery dock, her feet finding purchase on the weathered planks despite the growing swells that crash against the rocks below. Sarah, wait! Claire hisses, but she follows, her face pale with terror and determination in equal measure. The cave entrance yawns before them like a mouth, artificial lighting casting eerie shadows on walls that have been carved and reinforced with concrete. This isn't a natural formation, it's an engineered facility, hidden beneath Seal Island's rocky exterior. Sarah presses herself against the cave wall, listening to the voices echoing from within. The foreign language sounds Eastern European, possibly Russian, and the tone suggests heated discussion. Then Marcus's voice cuts through again, closer. Now filled with desperation. I've done everything you asked for 15 years. Please just let me go. 15 years, Claire breathes beside her. He's been their prisoner this entire time. The sisters creep deeper into the cave system, following a corridor that slopes downward into the island's heart. Emergency lighting strips provide minimal illumination, casting their shadows like dark ghosts on the walls. The air smells of diesel, fuel, electronic equipment, and something else: fear, desperation, the accumulated weight of years of confinement. As they round a corner, Sarah spots an observation window cut into the rock wall. Peering through the reinforced glass, she sees A sight that stops her heart. A sophisticated control room filled with computers, radio equipment, and monitoring stations. And there, hunched over a radio console with his hands bound, is Marcus. 15 years have aged him harshly. His dark hair has gone completely gray, deep lines etch his face, and his once powerful frame has been worn thin by captivity. But his eyes, those green eyes that had looked at her with love on their wedding day, remain unmistakably his. Standing over him are 3 men in military-style clothing, their faces hard with the authority of long practice. One holds a pistol while another manipulates radio equipment. The third man, clearly the leader, leans close to Marcus with predatory intensity. "Your wife took the bait beautifully," the leader says in accented English. 15 years of patience. And finally she comes to us. Sarah's blood turns to ice water. The radio transmissions, Marcus's desperate calls for help, they had all been orchestrated to lure her here. But why? What could these people possibly want with her? Marcus looks up with haunted eyes. Sarah has nothing to do with this. She's a librarian, for God's sake. She doesn't know anything about the operation. Perhaps not, the leader replies, but she knows you. And after 15 years of believing you dead, imagine how grateful she'd be to discover you alive. Grateful enough to do whatever we ask to keep you that way. The truth hits Sarah like a physical blow. This isn't about Marcus, it's about her. Whatever these people are planning, they need leverage. And Marcus has been their insurance policy for 15 years, kept alive specifically for this moment. Claire tugs at Sarah's sleeve, pointing down the corridor where footsteps echo against stone. Guards are approaching, their voices speaking the same foreign language they heard earlier. The sisters have minutes, maybe less, before discovery. Sarah scans the control room through the window, noting details with desperate efficiency. 2 additional exits, banks of monitoring equipment that suggest this facility extends far beyond what they've seen. And most importantly, a keycard reader beside the door. One of the guards in the room removes a keycard from his belt to access a computer terminal. Sarah memorizes the motion, the way he swipes it, the location of the reader. The approaching footsteps grow louder. "We need to move," Claire whispers. Urgently, now, but Sarah isn't ready to retreat. She spent 15 years mourning a man who was alive, 15 years rebuilding her life around a lie. Now that she's found Marcus, she won't abandon him to whatever these people have planned. "You go," she tells Claire. "Get back to the boat, call the Coast Guard, tell them everything. I'm not leaving you here. One of us needs to survive this to tell the story. If we both get caught." The conversation cuts short as the approaching guards round the corner, their flashlight beams sweeping the corridor ahead of them. Sarah and Claire press themselves into an alcove, hearts hammering as the light passes inches from their faces. The guards speak in low tones, their words incomprehensible but their alertness obvious. They've detected something, possibly the second chance at the dock, possibly traces of the sisters' passage through the cave system. One guard breaks off to check the control room while the other continues down the corridor toward the entrance. Sarah realizes with growing horror that he's heading directly for their boat, for Claire's only means of escape. Through the observation window, she watches the remaining guard enter the control room and speak rapidly to the leader. Marcus's head snaps up, his eyes widening with terror as he realizes what the guard must be reporting. "No," Marcus says, struggling against his bonds. "Please, if she's here, don't hurt her. I'll do anything you want, just don't." The leader backhands Marcus across the face, the sound echoing through the observation window. "You'll do what we want regardless. The question is whether your wife dies quickly or slowly." Sarah has heard enough. Whatever these people are planning, whatever they've done to Marcus for 15 years, it ends now. She moves toward the control room door, her hand reaching for the keycard reader she watched the guard use. Claire grabs her wrist. "Sarah, that's suicide." We don't even know how many of them there are. I know Marcus is in there. I know he's been tortured for 15 years because of something I don't understand. And I know I won't leave him again." The sisters stare at each other in the emergency lighting's red glow. 15 years of shared grief and hope crystallizing into this moment of impossible choice. From the control room comes the sound of radio chatter, voices reporting in multiple languages. Sarah catches fragments in English. Perimeter secured. Subjects contained. Initiate Protocol 7... Protocol 7. Whatever that means, it sounds final. Sarah makes her decision. She steps toward the keycard reader, knowing that once she swipes the stolen card, there will be no going back. Either she saves Marcus and they both escape, or they die together on this godforsaken island. Behind her, Claire makes a decision of her own, pulling out her phone and frantically typing a message before the signal jammers can block it completely. The keycard reader beeps softly as Sarah approaches, its red light blinking like a malevolent eye, waiting for the card that will either save them or doom them all. The stolen keycard slides through the reader with a soft electronic beep, and the control room door clicks open. Sarah's heart pounds so violently, she's certain everyone in the facility can hear it, but she forces herself to move forward into the lion's den. The three men in the control room spin toward the unexpected intrusion, their hands moving instinctively toward weapons. For a split second, the tableau freezes. Sarah framed in the doorway like an avenging angel, Marcus bound to his chair with recognition and terror warring in his eyes, and the captors caught between surprise and deadly calculation. "Sarah, run!" Marcus shouts, but his voice breaks with 15 years of suppressed emotion. The leader recovers first, his hand settling on his pistol grip without drawing. "Mrs. Webb, how punctual. We were just discussing your arrival." Sarah steps fully into the room. Claire closed behind her, despite every rational instinct screaming retreat. The door seals shut with an ominous click, trapping them in the electronic glow of monitors and blinking lights. "Let him go," Sarah demands, her voice steadier than she feels. "Whatever you want, whatever this is about, Marcus has given you 15 years of his life. Enough." The leader, a man in his 50s with steel-gray hair and eyes like winter smiles, without warmth. 15 years of preparation, Mrs. Webb. Do you know what your husband has been doing all this time?" Sarah's gaze flickers to Marcus, seeing shame and desperation etched into his weathered features. "I know he's been your prisoner." "Prisoner?" The leader laughs, a sound like breaking glass. "Show her, Marcus. Show your wife what you've become." One of the guards cuts Marcus's bonds, and Sarah expects him to collapse or flee. Instead, Marcus stands slowly, his movements careful but unrestrained. When he looks at Sarah, his eyes carry a weight she doesn't understand. "Sarah," Marcus's voice cracks with emotion, "I never wanted you to see this. I prayed you'd never have to know." "Know what?" Sarah steps toward him, but Marcus holds up a hand to stop her. "I wasn't fishing alone that day 15 years ago. I was ... I was carrying something. Documents, microfilm, information I was supposed to deliver to contacts in Boston." Marcus's words come in a rush, as if a dam has finally burst. "I worked for them, Sarah. For years before we met, I was a courier for Soviet intelligence operations." The words hit Sarah like physical blows. Her husband, the simple fisherman she'd married and mourned, had been living a double life. "That's impossible. You're not. You were never." "The Cold War didn't end for everyone, Mrs. Webb," the leader interjects. "There remained certain ... assets who continued to serve Mother Russia's interests. Your husband was very valuable to us." Claire speaks for the first time since entering the room. "Your Russian intelligence." "Was," the leader corrects. "Now we're freelancers, selling information and services to the highest bidder. But old loyalties die hard, and Marcus here." He gestures toward Sarah's husband with mock affection. "Marcus tried to defect, tried to disappear with information that could have destroyed entire networks. Sarah stares at Marcus, seeing 15 years of marriage dissolving before her eyes. The fishing trips, all those times you went out alone, ... I was meeting contacts, transferring intelligence, maintaining cover. Marcus's voice breaks. But Sarah, I swear to God, I was trying to get out. That last trip, I was supposed to deliver everything I had and then disappear. Start fresh somewhere they couldn't find me. Find you. Instead, we found him, the leader says, and realized his value wasn't just in what he knew, but in what he represented. A perfect sleeper agent, presumed dead, with a grieving widow who would do anything to have him back. The horrifying picture crystallizes in Sarah's mind. You've kept him alive for 15 years to use as leverage against me. You, Mrs. Webb, are the head librarian at the Maritime Archives. You have access to shipping records, immigration, documents, genealogical databases that span centuries. Information that certain clients find ... invaluable. Sarah feels the walls closing in around her. Her career, her expertise in historical research and database management had made her a target without her knowledge. You want me to steal classified documents. We want you to use your access to trace certain bloodlines, locate certain descendants, verify certain historical claims that have modern political implications. The leader's smile grows colder. There are people who will pay enormous sums to prove or disprove royal lineages, war crimes, property ownership dating back generations. And if I refuse? The leader nods to one of his men, who immediately draws his sidearm and points it at Marcus's head. Then your husband's 15-year ordeal ends very permanently. Marcus looks at Sarah with eyes full of love and resignation. Don't do it, Sarah. I've been dead to you for 15 years. Let me stay dead. Don't let them turn you into what they made me. But Sarah sees something else in his expression, a subtle shift of his eyes toward the bank of monitors behind the leader, then back to her. He's trying to tell her something. Following his gaze, Sarah notices what Marcus has spotted. One of the monitors shows the cave entrance, where armed figures in tactical gear are moving with military precision. Coast Guard uniforms are visible among them. Claire's desperate text message had gotten through before the signal jammers activated. You know what I find interesting about librarians? Sarah says, buying time as the rescue team positions itself. We're very good at research, at finding information people don't want found. The leader's confidence wavers slightly. What are you talking about? I've been researching my husband's disappearance for 15 years. Following paper trails, financial records, shipping manifests. Did you really think I hadn't noticed the patterns, the coincidences? It's a bluff, but Sarah sells it with the conviction of desperation. On the monitor behind the leader, she can see the tactical team preparing to breach the facility. You're lying, the leader says, but uncertainty creeps into his voice. Room 237 at the Marriott downtown. Your meeting with Dmitry Volkov last month. The wire transfer from the Cayman account ending in 7,749. Should I continue? The leader's face goes pale. Marcus stares at Sarah in amazement. She really had been investigating, really had been building a case without knowing what she was building toward. The first explosion rocks the facility as the Coast Guard begins their assault. In the chaos that follows, alarms blaring, lights flickering, armed men shouting orders, Sarah lunges toward Marcus while Claire tackles the nearest guard. The leader spins toward the monitors, realizing too late that his carefully orchestrated trap has become his prison. Marcus grabs Sarah's hand, his touch real and warm and alive after 15 years of absence. The back exit, he shouts over the din. I know another way out. But as they reach the control room's rear door, the leader's voice cuts through the chaos. Stop, or I kill your sister. Sarah turns to see Claire held at gunpoint, the leader's weapon pressed against her temple. Her sister's eyes are wide with terror, but still defiant, still protective even in the face of death. The choice that defines everything hangs in the air: save Marcus and sacrifice Claire, or surrender and hope the Coast Guard reaches them in time. Outside, the sound of approaching boots echoes through stone corridors as rescue and catastrophe race toward the same deadly finish line. "Let her go," Sarah commands, her voice cutting through the chaos of alarms and distant gunfire. "Your quarrel is with me, not Claire." The leader presses his weapon harder against Claire's temple, his face twisted with desperate calculation. Through the monitors, they can all see Coast Guard tactical teams advancing through the cave system, their progress methodical but relentless. "Your sister comes with us," the leader snarls. "Insurance policy. Until we reach international waters." Marcus steps forward, his 15 years of captivity evident in every measured movement. "Victor, you know this facility is compromised. Cut your losses. Take me instead. I'm the one with the intelligence you need." Victor finally named last bitterly. "You think I'm a fool, Marcus? You've been planning this rescue for months, haven't you? Feeding your wife information through those radio calls, leading her here when you knew backup was coming." Sarah's mind races as Victor's words sink in. The radio transmissions hadn't been random. Marcus had been deliberately guiding her here. But not as bait for a trap. He'd been orchestrating his own rescue, using their love as a beacon to bring help to this godforsaken island. "The coordinates he gave me," Sarah realizes aloud. "They weren't just about finding him. They were tactical information." Marcus nods grimly. "I've been mapping this facility for years, documenting their operations, waiting for the right moment. When I learned about Protocol 7... What's Protocol 7? Claire asks, her voice tight with fear but still seeking answers. Victor's face goes ashen. "Shut up, Marcus. Shut up or I'll—" "He's going to tell her anyway," Marcus interrupts, addressing Victor with the weary authority of someone who has nothing left to lose. "Protocol 7 is elimination of all assets and evidence. They're planning to sink this facility, destroy the records, and disappear, along with everyone who knows about their operations." The implications crash over Sarah like a tidal wave. "Including you, including all of us." "The explosive charges are already set," Marcus confirms. "Timed detonation in." He glances at a digital countdown display on one of the monitors. 18 minutes. Victor's backup plan crystallizes with terrifying clarity. If he can't extract value from the situation, he'll destroy all evidence of his organization's existence, even if it means sacrificing his own men in the facility. 18 minutes to reach the surface and get clear of the blast radius. Claire calculates, her librarian's mind working even under extreme duress. The tactical teams are still fighting their way through the upper levels, engaging Victor's security forces in running battles that echo through the stone corridors. Sarah realizes they might not reach the control room before the explosives detonate. "There has to be another way out," she says, studying the facility schematics displayed on the monitors. "Marcus, you've been here for 15 years. You must." "No, the submarine bay," Marcus says suddenly. "They have a mini-sub for emergency evacuation. But Victor has the access codes." All eyes turn to the Russian leader, who holds Claire at gunpoint while his other hand hovers over what Sarah now realizes is a detonation trigger. His thumb rests on a red button marked with Cyrillic characters. "Clever," Victor admits. "But meaningless. I can trigger the charges manually if necessary. We all die together, or we all escape together. Your choice, Mrs. Webb." Sarah looks at Marcus, seeing 15 years of suffering etched into his face but also a terrible resolve. He's prepared to die here rather than let Victor escape to continue his operations elsewhere. "What do you want?" Sarah asks Victor, though she already knows the answer. "You come with me. Your expertise, your access to the maritime archives, your knowledge of shipping records and genealogical databases. In exchange, your husband and sister live long enough to be rescued. Don't do it, Sarah, Marcus pleads. These people. What? They do with the information you'd give them. The lives they'd destroy. But Sarah is already calculating. Victor needs her alive and cooperative. That gives her leverage, time to find another solution. And if the Coast Guard is as close as the monitors suggest, I'll come with you, she says. But first, you give me the submarine access codes. I want to verify there's actually an escape route before I agree to anything. Victor's eyes narrow with suspicion, but the approaching gunfire and dwindling countdown force his hand. 77 Romeo Alpha Niner, he says reluctantly. Sarah memorizes the code while studying the facility schematics. The submarine bay is 3 levels down, accessible through a freight elevator near the back of the complex. But she notices something else on the blueprints, a secondary control station for the explosive charges, located in the submarine bay itself. A desperate plan begins forming in her mind. Marcus, she says carefully, do you remember our anniversary dinner? The one where you told me about the emergency procedures at the Coast Guard station? Marcus's eyes widen with understanding. During their 3rd anniversary, he'd shared stories about fail-safe protocols, how explosives could be disarmed if you knew the right sequence, how backup systems always had manual overrides. I remember, he says, his voice heavy. With meaning, the backup systems always had redundancies. Victor looks between them suspiciously, but the approaching tactical teams force him to move. Enough conversation. We leave now, or everyone dies in. He checks the countdown, 14 minutes. As Victor begins herding them toward the rear exit, Sarah catches Claire's eye and mouths a single word: trust. Her sister nods almost imperceptibly, and Sarah knows that whatever happens next, they face it together, just as they've faced everything else for the past 15 years. The freight elevator carries them down into the facility's depths, each floor passing like a fatua. Countdown to either salvation or catastrophe. Sarah clutches the submarine access codes in her memory, while planning moves and countermoves in a deadly game where the stakes are not just their lives, but the future of everyone Victor's organization might target. The elevator doors open to reveal the submarine bay, a flooded chamber carved from living rock, where a sleek vessel waits like a mechanical shark in dark water. And there, just as Sarah hoped, stands the secondary detonation control panel. 12 minutes remain on the countdown, and Sarah Webb prepares to make the most important gamble of her life. The submarine bay echoes with the sound of lapping water against artificial shores carved from bedrock. Emergency lighting casts eerie reflections on the black surface where Victor's escape vessel waits, a 30-foot submersible that looks more like a military prototype than civilian craft. Sarah's eyes immediately locate the secondary detonation control panel mounted on the wall between 2 support pillars. Red status lights blinked ominously, confirming that the explosive charges remain armed and counting down. 11 minutes and 43 seconds. Move, Victor orders, pushing Claire ahead of him while keeping his weapon trained on her. Marcus, prep the sub for emergency departure. Mrs. Webb, you're coming aboard whether you like it or not. But Sarah has spotted something Victor hasn't noticed in his desperation to escape. Wet footprints leading from the submarine to a maintenance ladder that disappears into the ceiling. Recent footprints. Someone else has been here, and recently. Marcus approaches the submarine's control panel, his movements deliberate and practiced. Victor, the ballast systems need at least 3 minutes to cycle. We can't dive immediately. Then we wait at periscope depth until the charges detonate, Victor snaps. This entire facility will collapse into a sinkhole. No evidence, no witnesses, no problems. Sarah realizes with growing horror that Victor intends to watch the destruction from safety, ensuring that anyone who might have survived the initial blast drowns when the ocean rushes in to fill the void. The Coast Guard teams fighting their way through the upper levels have no idea they're racing against both time and rising water. The access codes, Victor demands, turning to Sarah. Input them now. Sarah approaches the submarine's entry panel, her fingers hovering over the keypad. But instead of entering the codes Victor provided, she begins typing a different sequence, one Marcus taught her years ago during a tour of Coast Guard facilities. An emergency lockdown code. The panel flashes red. Access denied. What did you do? Victor's voice turns deadly. I entered the codes you gave me. Sarah lies smoothly. Your submarine's been compromised. Someone's changed the access protocols. Victor's face goes white as he realizes the implications. If the submarine is locked down, his only escape route is blocked. The wet footprints suddenly make terrible. Sense someone from the Coast Guard's advance team has already been here. You're lying, Victor snarls, but uncertainty creeps into his voice. Try the codes yourself, Sarah challenges, stepping back from the panel. As Victor moves toward the submarine, keeping his weapon trained on Claire, Sarah catches Marcus's eye and nods toward the detonation control panel. He understands immediately. While Victor is distracted, they need to disarm the charges. But Victor is too experienced to fall for such an obvious trap. Marcus, you input the codes. Your wife stays where I can see her. Marcus approaches the submarine panel while Sarah desperately searches for another option. The wet footprints lead to a maintenance ladder, suggesting the Coast Guard has found alternative routes through the facility. But how can she signal them without alerting Victor? The answer comes from an unexpected source. Claire. Sarah, her sister says suddenly, remember what Dad used to say about the lighthouse? About signal patterns? Sarah's heart leaps with understanding. Their father had been a lighthouse keeper before becoming a fisherman, and he'd taught them Morse code as children. Claire is suggesting they signal for help using the facility's lighting system. The main power controls are mounted near the detonation panel. If Sarah can reach them while Victor is focused on Marcus and the submarine... The access panel is accepting the codes, Marcus reports, but Sarah can hear tension in his voice. He's stalling, drawing out the process to buy them time. 8 minutes remain on the countdown. Sarah begins moving slowly toward the power controls, using the submarine as cover. But Victor catches the movement in his peripheral vision. Stop, he commands, swinging his weapon between Sarah and Claire. Everyone stay exactly where they are. That's when the lights go out. Emergency power kicks in a heartbeat later, bathing the submarine bay in red illumination. But in that moment of darkness, everything changes. Sarah hears the splash of someone dropping from the maintenance ladder into the water, followed by the distinctive sound of tactical gear moving through the flooded chamber. Coast Guard, drop your weapons. The voice echoes from multiple directions as divers emerge from concealment around the submarine bay. Victor spins wildly, trying to track multiple targets in the red emergency lighting. His weapon wavers between Claire and the approaching tactical team. I'll kill her, Victor shouts. I'll kill them all if you don't back off. But Marcus has used the confusion to reach the detonation control panel. His fingers fly over the controls, inputting override sequences he's observed and memorized during 15 years of captivity. Victor, Marcus calls out. It's over. The charges are disarmed. Victor's face contorts with rage and desperation. You're lying. The timer shows 6 minutes remaining. Display timers can lie, Marcus says grimly. I've been watching your people for 15 years, learning your systems. The real detonation sequence was tied to a master control that I just disabled. Sarah sees the moment Victor realizes he's been outmaneuvered. His escape route is blocked. His insurance policy is neutralized, and Coast Guard divers have him surrounded in an underground chamber with no exits. But cornered animals are the most dangerous. If I can't escape, Victor snarls, then we all die together. He pulls a secondary device from his jacket, a dead man's switch that Sarah recognizes from thriller movies, but has never seen in real life. His thumb hovers over a red button that will detonate backup charges even if the main system is disabled. "Victor, don't," Marcus pleads. "You've lost. Accept it." "I don't lose," Victor replies, his voice carrying the cold certainty of a man who has nothing left to lose. Sarah realizes with crystalline clarity that Victor will trigger the explosives rather than face capture. In 30 seconds, everyone in the submarine bay will be dead, and the facility will collapse into the sea, unless someone stops him first. Sarah looks at Claire, sees the same realization in her sister's eyes. Without speaking, they both understand what has to happen next. The sisters move simultaneously, Claire throwing herself away from Victor's gun arm, while Sarah lunges toward the dead man's switch. The submarine bay erupts in chaos as Coast Guard divers converge on Victor's position. But Victor's finger is already tightening on the detonation trigger, and Sarah realizes she's not going to reach him in time. The explosion that follows will either save them all or doom them, and in the split second before impact, Sarah sees Marcus reaching for her, with 15 years of love and desperation in his eyes. The underwater explosion isn't what Sarah expects. Instead of the facility-destroying blast Victor intended, a smaller detonation erupts from the submarine bay's outer wall. Water rushes through a breach the size of a car door, but the main structure holds. Marcus had been telling the truth about disabling the primary charges, leaving Victor with only a backup device that damaged the bay's hull without triggering total collapse. But as frigid Atlantic water pours through the breach, Sarah realizes they're trading one death for another. Victor's body floats face down in the rapidly rising water, a Coast Guard sniper's bullet having found its mark the instant before he triggered the backup explosives. The dead man's switch bobs beside him, its red light now dark and harmless. "Everyone out, now!" The Coast Guard team leader's voice cuts through the chaos as water surges around their ankles. This chamber's flooding fast. Sarah finds herself pulled toward the maintenance ladder by strong hands, but she twists back toward Marcus, who's struggling against the current while trying to reach something at the detonation control panel. "Marcus, leave it!" she shouts over the roar of incoming water. "Evidence!" he calls back, yanking a waterproof case from beneath the control station. 15 years of intelligence about their operations. Names, contacts, financial records. A Coast Guard diver reaches Marcus just as the water rises to his chest, hauling him toward the ladder as the submarine bay transforms into a death trap. The sleek escape vessel that was meant to be Victor's salvation now floats uselessly, taken on water through its open hatch. Sarah's hands burn as she climbs the maintenance ladder, her muscles protesting after the adrenaline-fueled chaos below. Behind her, she can hear Claire's labored breathing and the splash of Coast Guard divers executing their own emergency evacuation. The ladder leads to a service tunnel that angles upward through solid rock. Emergency lighting strips guide their path as they half run, half stumble through the narrow passage. The sound of rushing water echoes behind them, growing more distant but never disappearing entirely. How much of the facility is flooded? Sarah gasps as they emerge into a wider corridor she recognizes from their initial infiltration. "Just the lower levels," the team leader replies, consulting a tablet that displays facility schematics. "Your husband's sabotage contained the breach to the submarine bay. Structural engineers say the rest should hold." They climb for what feels like hours, but must be only minutes, following the Coast Guard's predetermined evacuation route. When they finally emerge into daylight, Sarah is startled to see the sun breaking through the storm clouds that had threatened all morning. The rocky surface of Seal Island looks different in natural light, less mysterious, more mundane. It's hard to believe that beneath their feet lies a sophisticated intelligence facility that has Operated in secret for over a decade. Coast Guard cutters surround the island, their crews working to evacuate personnel and secure evidence. In the distance, Sarah can see the mysterious vessel that had first alerted her to the island's secrets being boarded by federal agents. Marcus collapses onto the rocky ground beside her, the waterproof case clutched against his chest like a lifeline. 15 years of captivity have taken their toll. He's thinner than she remembers, marked by scars and stress lines that speak of prolonged suffering. But his eyes, when they meet hers, carry the same love she remembers from their wedding day. "Sarah," he says, his voice breaking with emotion, "I'm so sorry for everything. For the lies, for the deception, for letting you think I was dead." Sarah kneels beside him, her hands hovering inches from his face as if afraid he might disappear. "Again. Why didn't you tell me? About the intelligence work, about what you were really doing." Marcus closes his eyes, pain flickering across his features. "I was trying to get out. The fishing business was legitimate. I really was a fisherman. But the courier work, it started before we met, when I was young and stupid and thought I was serving my country during the Cold War. By the time I realized what I'd gotten into, what kind of people I was working for, I was in too deep. They had leverage, threats, so I kept working for them while trying to find a way out." Claire sits heavily on a nearby boulder, her clothes soaked and her face pale with exhaustion. "And the last trip? 15 years ago? I thought I had an exit strategy. A contact in Boston who could help me disappear, start fresh somewhere they couldn't find me. I was going to deliver one final package and then vanish." Marcus opens his eyes, looking directly at Sarah. "I was going to come back for you. Find a way to explain, to bring you with me to wherever I ended up. But they were waiting," Sarah realizes. "Victor's people intercepted me 12 miles out. They'd been suspicious for months, monitoring my communications, following my movements. When they realized I was trying to defect," Marcus shudders, "they decided I was more valuable as a prisoner than a corpse." The implications of 15 years of captivity hang heavy in the salt air. Sarah finds herself studying Marcus's face, cataloging the changes wrought by isolation and stress, wondering if the man she loved still exists beneath the scars. "The radio transmissions," she says. "How did you manage to contact me?" A ghost of Marcus's old smile appears. "Victor's people needed me to maintain their equipment, translate intercepted communications, provide technical expertise about Coast Guard procedures. I've been sabotaging their operations for years in small ways they never noticed. But the radios in particular, I convinced them I needed access to monitor Coast Guard frequencies for their security. What they didn't know was that I'd rigged one of their transmitters to occasionally break through to civilian frequencies. You were gambling that I'd hear you. I was gambling that you still had my old radio, that you might be listening on the anniversary." Marcus's voice grows soft. "With memory. I knew if anyone would hear me, would believe it was really me, it would be you." Sarah feels tears burning behind her eyes, tears of relief, of grief for lost years, of overwhelming joy that Marcus is alive. But underneath those emotions lurks a harder question. What happens now? 15 years is a lifetime. She's changed, he's changed, and the life they shared exists only in memory. Can they rebuild something real from the wreckage of deception and forced separation? "There's something else," Marcus says, his voice taking on new urgency. "The intelligence case, it contains more than just Victor's operations. There are documents about other cells, other assets still active in North America." He opens the waterproof case to reveal drives, documents, and photographs that represent 15 years of careful documentation. "I memorized everything I could, copied what I was able to access. The authorities need this information to roll up the entire network." Sarah realizes that Marcus's ordeal isn't over. The intelligence he's gathered will make him a valuable witness. likely requiring months or years of debriefings, trials, and testimony. Their reunion, miraculous as it is, comes with a price. Will we have time? She asks, the question encompassing everything she can't quite put into words. Time to figure out who we are now. What we mean to each other after all this. Marcus reaches for her hand, his fingers rough with calluses and scars, but warm with familiar life. We'll make time. However long it takes, whatever obstacles they put in our way, we'll make time. As Coast Guard helicopters circle overhead and federal agents begin the complex process of cataloging evidence, Sarah holds her husband's hand and allows herself to hope that some endings can become beginnings. But in the distance, a new radio transmission crackles across the tactical frequencies, coded message in Russian that makes Marcus's face go pale with recognition. Their ordeal on Seal Island may be over, but the larger game they've stumbled into is just beginning. The Russian transmission crackles through the Coast Guard's communication equipment like a ghost from the past. Marcus's face drains of color. As he listens to the coded phrases, his 15 years of forced expertise translating the message in real time. What is it? Sarah asks, though the dread in Marcus's expression already provides the answer. Cleanup protocol, Marcus whispers, his grip tightening on her hand. They're activating sleeper assets across the eastern seaboard. Victor's capture has triggered an emergency response. Coast Guard Commander Patricia Hayes approaches their position, her expression grim as she studies intelligence reports on her tablet. Mr. Webb, we need your expertise immediately. That transmission originated from multiple points, Boston, Portland, St. John. Whatever network you were part of, it's mobilizing. Sarah feels the fragile hope of reunion slipping away as Marcus transforms before her eyes. The broken prisoner of minutes ago straightens into someone harder, more focused, the intelligence operative he'd tried to leave behind 15 years ago. How many assets are we talking about? Hayes asks. Marcus closes his eyes, accessing memories he'd probably prefer to forget. When I was active, the North Atlantic cell had at least 12 deep cover operatives. Fishermen, dock workers, shipping. Clerks people with access to maritime traffic and cargo manifests. And now they're activated because of us, Claire says, her voice heavy with guilt. Not because of us, Marcus corrects. Because Victor got careless. My escape was just the trigger. This network was always vulnerable to exposure. Sarah watches her husband slip back into the role he'd tried to escape, and she realizes their personal reunion must wait. The intelligence case he'd rescued from the flooding submarine bay contains the keys to dismantling a spy network that has operated undetected for decades. There's something else, Marcus says, his voice taking on new urgency. The assets aren't just gathering intelligence anymore. The final transmissions I intercepted before my escape, they're planning something called Operation Stormwind. Commander. Hayes leans forward. What kind of operation? Sabotage. They've identified critical infrastructure targets along the eastern seaboard shipping channels, power grids, communication hubs. The goal is to create cascading failures that look like natural disasters or accidents. The scope of the threat crystallizes around them. Victor's operation on Seal Island wasn't an isolated cell. It was the command center for a network preparing to cripple North America's maritime infrastructure. Timeline? Hayes asks. Marcus opens the waterproof case and extracts a coded document. According to this, Stormwind activates in 72 hours. They're using the anniversary of some historical event as cover, but I can't decode the significance. Sarah studies the document over Marcus's shoulder, her librarian's instincts engaging despite the chaos around them. The date references and coded symbols trigger recognition patterns she's developed through years of historical research. October 18th, she says suddenly. The anniversary of the Alaska Purchase. When the United States bought Alaska from Russia in 1867, Marcus and Commander Hayes stare at her. How do you? Hayes begins. Maritime archives, Sarah explains. I've cataloged hundreds of shipping records related to the Alaska purchase. The symbolism would appeal to Russian intelligence, striking back on the anniversary of what they consider a national humiliation. That gives us 3 days to identify and neutralize 12 sleeper agents across 3 countries, Hayes says grimly. Mr. Webb, we need everything you remember about their identities, their covers, their operational methods. But Marcus is studying another document from the case, his face growing pale. There's a problem. The sleeper assets don't know each other's identities. Victor compartmentalized the network for security. Each operative only knew their own mission and a single contact point. Which was Victor, Sarah realizes. Who's now dead, Hayes confirms. So we can't use him to recall the assets or feed them false instructions. The tactical situation becomes clear. A dozen hidden operatives are preparing to execute coordinated attacks, but without central command, they can't be recalled or redirected. They'll proceed with their missions regardless of Victor's fate. Unless, Marcus says slowly, studying the intelligence documents, there might be a way. Victor always maintained backup communication protocols. Emergency frequencies that could reach all assets simultaneously. You want to impersonate him? Claire asks. I want to abort their missions. Send a general recall order that brings them out of hiding so they can be identified and arrested. Commander Hayes shakes her head. Too risky. If they suspect deception, they'll accelerate their timeline. Instead of 3 days, we might have 3 hours. Sarah watches the debate unfold while studying the coded documents. Her years of archival work have taught her to spot patterns others miss, and something in Victor's operational notes triggers recognition. There's another option, she says. Marcus, you said the operatives don't know each other, but they would know their handlers' verification codes, correct? Yes, but those codes died with Victor, not necessarily. Sarah points to a series of numbers in the margins of one document. These aren't random notations, they're reference codes for maritime shipping manifests. Victor was using my archives as a source for his verification protocols. The implications hit Marcus immediately. You have access to the verification system. More than that. If Victor was using historical shipping records to generate his codes, I can predict the next sequence in the pattern. We don't need to impersonate Victor. We need to send orders that appear to come from his successor. Commander Hayes looks between Sarah and Marcus, weighing desperate options against impossible odds. Mrs. Webb, what you're suggesting would require you to actively participate in intelligence operations. The legal implications alone are irrelevant, Sarah interrupts. These people are planning to attack civilian infrastructure. If my expertise can help stop them, then that's what I'm going to do. Marcus grabs her arm. Sarah, this isn't your world. These people, if they discover you're involved, if they realize you're the one unraveling their network, then they'll come after me the same way they came after you. Sarah meets her husband's eyes with steady resolve. I've already lost 15 years to these people, Marcus. I won't lose the future too. The radio crackles again with another coded transmission, this one closer possibly from the Nova Scotia mainland. Time is running out for discussion and debate. Commander Hayes makes the decision that will define everything that follows. Mrs. Webb, Mr. Webb, you're both now under federal protection and consultation. We have 68 hours to prevent a coordinated attack on North American infrastructure. And if we fail? Claire asks. Hayes looks toward the horizon where storm clouds are gathering for what the Weather Service is calling the storm of the decade. If we fail, Operation Stormwind succeeds during the worst weather in years. The damage will be catastrophic, and it will look like Mother Nature did it all. Sarah follows the commander's gaze toward the approaching storm, understanding that their race against time has become a race against nature itself. In 68 hours, either they'll have dismantled a spy network, that has operated in the shadows for decades, or the eastern seaboard will face disasters that could take years to repair. The radio in Marcus's hands crackles one more time, and through the static comes a voice. Speaking English with a slight accent. Stormwind assets, acknowledge status. The Wolf runs tonight. Marcus looks at Sarah with a mixture of pride and terror. That's the activation code. They're not waiting 72 hours anymore. The operation to save the eastern seaboard has just become a desperate sprint against an enemy they can't see, using weapons they're still learning to deploy. The Coast Guard command center aboard the cutter Resolute transforms into a war room as the first reports of sabotage begin filtering in. At 11:47 p.m., a communications tower outside Portland goes dark. At 12:15 a.m., a shipping channel marker near Boston Harbor malfunctions. By 1:30 a.m., 3 separate incidents have created a pattern that confirms Operation Stormwind is no longer theoretical. Sarah sits before a bank of monitors, her fingers flying across keyboards as she accesses maritime archives from around the world. The verification codes she's deciphered have given them communication with 6 of the 12 sleeper assets, but the remaining operatives have gone silent, either suspicious of the transmissions or already committed to their individual missions. Power substation in St. John just reported transformer failures. Commander Hayes announces from across the room. That's 4 incidents in 6 hours, all designed to look like storm damage. Through the command center's windows, Sarah can see the Atlantic churning with increasing violence. The storm that was supposed to provide cover for the sabotage operations has intensified beyond all predictions, with sustained winds approaching hurricane force. Marcus works beside her, his 15 years of captivity transformed into an asset as he decodes intercepted transmissions and predicts operational patterns. The broken prisoner has become a master strategist, orchestrating counter-operations with the same precision Victor's network uses for destruction. "I've got something," Marcus says suddenly, pointing to a coded message on his screen. Emergency rendezvous coordinates. If the primary operation fails, the surviving assets are supposed to meet at a backup location. Sarah studies the coordinates, her archival memory clicking into place. That's the old Sambro Island lighthouse, decommissioned in 1998, but the structure's still standing. "How far from our current position?" Hayes asks. 12 miles southeast, Marcus replies, then pauses as he analyzes weather data. "But Commander, the storm's tracking directly over that position. Winds are hitting 90 miles per hour with 30-foot swells." The tactical situation crystallizes with terrible clarity. The surviving operatives are retreating to a position that will be essentially unreachable once the storm peaks, but it's also where they're most vulnerable to capture if someone can reach them in time. "Ma'am," the communications officer calls. "Out. We're receiving a priority transmission from Canadian Maritime Forces. They're reporting suspicious activity near Sambro Island, multiple small boats converging despite the weather warnings." Commander Hayes studies weather displays and tactical maps, calculating odds that would challenge a Vegas bookie. "Mrs. Webb, Mr. Webb, I need your professional assessment. Is there any way to reach that lighthouse and interdict the remaining assets?" Sarah looks at Marcus, seeing 15 years of separation and suffering in his weathered face, but also the man she married, the fisherman who had navigated these waters in worse conditions than this. "The second chance is still moored at Murphy's Marina," Sarah says quietly. She's small enough to handle the swells, and Marcus knows these waters better than anyone. "Absolutely not," Hayes replies immediately. "I can't authorize civilians to attempt a rescue operation in hurricane force conditions." "Then don't authorize it," Marcus says, standing and moving toward the communication equipment. "Sarah, can you transmit new orders to the assets we're still in contact with? Tell them the rendezvous has been moved to coordinates I'm about to give you." Sarah understands immediately. Marcus intends to lure the remaining operatives away from their lighthouse sanctuary to a location where the Coast Guard can intercept them safely. But doing so requires someone to physically reach Sambro Island and confirm the deception. "Marcus," she says softly, "you can't sail the Second Chance alone in this weather." "I won't be alone." He meets her eyes with the same steady gaze that had convinced her to marry him 15 years ago. "My wife is an excellent navigator, and she knows these waters almost as well as I do." Commander Hayes starts to protest, but Claire interrupts from her position at the radio console. "Commander, we're losing contact with the assets we've been monitoring. Whatever they're planning at that lighthouse, it's happening now." The tactical displays show the storm reaching its peak intensity, with the eye wall approaching the Nova Scotia coast. In 2 hours, the weather will be too severe for any rescue attempt. After that, the surviving operatives will have 12 hours of storm cover to complete whatever final mission they're planning. Sarah makes the decision that defines the rest of her life. "Commander, Marcus and I are going to Sambro Island. Not as federal consultants, not as protected witnesses, but as Canadian citizens exercising our right to navigate our own waters. Even if I could stop you legally." Hayes says grimly, "Which I probably can't. The weather will likely kill you before you get within 5 miles of that lighthouse." Marcus moves to the communications console and begins transmitting false coordinates to the remaining assets, his voice carrying Victor's authoritative tone perfectly. The responses come back in coded acknowledgments. The surviving operatives are buying the deception, at least temporarily. "That gives us maybe an hour before they realize the rendezvous coordinates are fake," Marcus reports. "After that, they'll return to the lighthouse and execute whatever contingency plan they have." Sarah looks at Claire, seeing fear and pride warring in her sister's expression. "If we don't make it back, you'll make it back," Claire interrupts fiercely. "You found each other after 15 years of believing it was impossible. A little hurricane isn't going to stop you now." 30 minutes later, Sarah and Marcus are aboard the Second Chance, fighting their way through swells that tower above the wheelhouse. The little fishing boat climbs mountainous waves and crashes through valleys of black water, her engine screaming with effort as she battles towards Sambro Island. Marcus handles the wheel with the expertise of 30 years on the Atlantic, reading the wave patterns and timing their approach to each swell. Sarah monitors the radio and GPS, tracking their progress against the storm's intensifying fury. "There," Marcus shouts over the wind, pointing toward a light barely visible through the rain and spray. The lighthouse beam someone's activated the emergency beacon. As they close the distance to Sambro Island, Sarah spots boats pulled up. On the rocky shore, small craft that had somehow made the same impossible journey they're attempting. The surviving operatives are definitely there, sheltering in the lighthouse while the storm rages around them. "Marcus," Sarah says, studying the tactical display on their GPS unit, "I'm reading 8 heat signatures in the lighthouse structure. If there are only 6 remaining assets, then they have hostages," Marcus finishes grimly. "Probably Coast Guard personnel from the lighthouse maintenance crew." The rescue mission has become something more complex, not just stopping the remaining saboteurs, but saving innocent lives in the process. As the Second Chance fights through the final approach to Sambro Island, Sarah realizes that everything they've been through, 15 years of separation, Victor's deception, the revelation of Marcus's double life has led to this moment. The lighthouse beam sweeps across the storm-tossed sea, and Sarah can see figures moving in the structure's windows. Some are armed operatives preparing for a final stand, but others are bound prisoners whose only hope for survival depends on a fisherman and a librarian willing to sail into the heart of a hurricane. Marcus guides the Second Chance toward the island's small harbor, where the real battle for their future and the safety of the eastern seaboard is about to begin. Behind them, the storm closes off their escape route, ensuring that whatever happens on Sambro Island there will be no retreat. Sarah grabs Marcus's hand as the boat crashes through the final wave before the harbor, and she sees in his eyes the same love that has sustained them through 15 years of impossible separation. Whatever comes next, they'll face it together. The lighthouse beam sweeps across them one final time as they reach the shore, illuminating two figures who have crossed an ocean of deception and lost to stand together against the storm. In the distance, dawn breaks gray and uncertain over an Atlantic that has given up its secrets and its dead, but has also returned what was most precious of all, the chance for love to triumph over the deepest darkness. The voice from the abandoned radio has led them home,